As the story continues with the case of the deadly shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, you'll hear it here first, and we'll bring you the breaking news as it goes. The latest news on this is police find a backpack in Central Park today, this evening, possible link to the gunman who killed the CEO. A manhunt is underway for the shooter, and it's stunning to me how an assassin escaped one of the most surveilled cities in the world. I mean, think about it. You can't do anything in New York without cameras everywhere tracking your every move. I mean, they got them everywhere. The biggest city in the world. You can't do anything in New York. And somehow this guy has eluded authorities for now. I still contend they'll get him. They'll get the man. And it's a fascinating story to me because it's a healthcare story, but it's also a murder mystery. And it's we all want to know why, what's behind it. As I read through all the stories online, I spent most of the afternoon and morning going through some of this. And it amazes me as I saw several of these stories, how many people sympathize with the shooter. I don't. I'm not one of those. But of the comments that I've seen posted, across social media unleashed a barrage of caustic commentary about the death in lieu of condolences. Americans from all walks of life shared barbed jokes and grim memes and personal anecdotes about their own experience with giant insurers like United Healthcare. I saw one post across United Healthcare's Facebook page where they had issued a statement about the murder of its CEO. It had at one time elicited 46,000 reactions, 41,000 of which employed the laughing emoji. Think about that. All but, what is that? 90% of the posts were laughing and emojis and glorifying the assassination of their CEO. Wow, 41,000 out of 46,000 before they took the post down. That was very telling to me, and it made me wonder, and I want to ask that question. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Crock tonight. Have you been wronged by an insurance company? I'd like to hear your story, and I especially want to hear from folks who work in insurance or healthcare. I know you've got stories yourself, and if you need to change your name to protect your identity, I don't have a problem with that, but I'd like to hear real stories about how this story is developing and how it impacts all of us. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. The phone number 800-288-9227. Garrett Tarango is my partner in crime. We'll answer the phone and pick your brain a little bit and shoot me a note so we can keep up to speed on that. Let's get straight to the phones. Max from Lake Whitney. I appreciate you holding through the news break. Thank you for calling and thank you for comments, Max. What's your opinion?
Hey, man, can you hear me?
I can, Max. Go ahead.
I'm waiting on my car at DFW. Yeah, I do. I live at Lake Whitney. I've been a DOD contractor since the early 90s, and when Barack Obama started the Affordable Care Act, and I work in war zones, my premiums went from $700 a month to $2,800 a month, and I have a family of 3, all total. My premiums working in Afghanistan and Iraq, were about $5,000 a month. I got hit with a rocket at Bagram Airfield in 2018, May 10th, 2018. I woke up in Germany, and Aetna paid the reconstruction surgery of all my body, and I showed back up in North Texas. My home at the time was in North Texas. And I had some follow-up issues and other problems, like another blood problem, pardon me, and they wanted another $15,000 deductible. So I understand, why people are so disgusted with insurance companies.
Wow. You talked about your current insurance company. Aren't you covered a lot through the VA that covers your insurance?
I am, but the VA is kind of a bunch of trouble. However, I'm not a retired veteran. I just did about 4.5 years, but I'm self-insured now.
Max, thank you for listening and thank you for calling and thank you for sharing your thought. That personifies a little bit about some of the stories that I've read across social media sites. Thank you very much. Leighton from Cisco, thank you for holding for a while. You're on with Westside Jeff. Your opinion?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me call, Mr. Jeff. Like the previous caller was saying, the VA is a bunch of trouble. It had taken almost 4 years going through the procedure to get lined up with a top tier neurosurgeon, and the VA was going to pay the bills. Complication on the surgery table, they put in an emergency request, and the VA, Mr. Trump or President Trump had signed a law saying you've got 30 days for this. If extra care is required, you got 30 days to expedite it. 75 days later, with no action taken, I mean, zero. It took a congression. I don't know how many doctors had called down trying to get something going. I had to get a hold of my congressman. They had to put in a congressional request before anything was done. In that meantime, that 4 years of effort went to the wayside. Now the VA has kicked it over to another neurosurgeon who is still, they're good, but they're not the same. Also, this new surgeon, their procedure is you've got to have an MRI before we see you. And if you don't have an MRI, when we won't see you without an MRI, but we won't request an MRI until we see you. And that, I've got 10 spinal injuries. It's, pain is my constant companion. And this malarkey, for lack of I'm trying to be polite, but this malarkey is just so outrageous that when these insurance companies, these bureaucrats, these faceless paper pushers jerk you around and put you through hell, if you ever get a name and a face, it's often your first instinct to want to go and punch them in the nose. So, what these people are saying about these big insurance companies, it makes sense. I mean, heck, a good friend of mine finally got a job with good benefits, sitting there paying in, finds out that she's got a ripped disc in her back. She needs surgery. Boom. All of a sudden, her insurance has dropped. No, there's no nothing. Now she has
from
to
the employer. The employer's insurance company dropped her.
Yeah, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, just no questions, just straight dropped. No, nothing.
That's interesting. It doesn't sound right to me. I've never heard of that, and that just seems odd to me.
Well, I talked to friends and acquaintances both that had worked law enforcement and military, and they were telling us the same thing, that Blue Cross Blue Shield has gotten, in the past few years, has gotten a real bad rap of just straight dropping people for no reason.
Interesting. Leighton, thank you for calling and thank you for your story. I appreciate it very much. It's interesting. I have two back-to-back calls that mention the VA because my brother's a veteran. He has a Purple Heart. He was shot in Vietnam. He has a hatred for the VA, but I've spent a lot of time with him because I'm his caregiver. He's never married, no kids, nobody to lean on, just me, and spent a lot of time with him at the VA. And it seems like he's kind of coming around on the VA because the VA hospital we visited several times actually has improved dramatically over what he thought it once was or what it once was and what it used to be. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Kroc. And my question to you with regard to this United Healthcare story is, have you been wronged by an insurance company, and what specifically does that look like? How have you been screwed by an insurance company? Because that's all I've seen across social media. It made me want to ask that question on the radio to hear real stories from people right here in my backyard. I'd love to hear your story at 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. And also, I'd like to hear from people who work in insurance companies and healthcare providers. I see Donna online from Greenwood. We'll get to you right after the break. I get to hit a break. Looks like maybe you worked with an insurance company at one time or in the business. I'd love to hear, especially from those folks. This is a real story, and I think it's worth talking about and shedding light on it and talking about the problems and potential solutions. I want to hear from you. 800-288-9227 is my number. You can also hit me up at Westside Jeff across social media. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, sitting in the News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Westside Jeff is my name, and we're talking about the big story today. And it's a continuation of a murder mystery out of New York City with the death of CEO of United Healthcare, gunned down in New York. And earlier today, I was reading many different stories about it, and I saw how on Facebook, United Healthcare had issued a statement right after the murder of its chief executive that elicited 46,000 reactions. 41,000 of which those reactions employed a laughing emoji. The company quickly turned off comments on the post, but hundreds of users continued to share it across social media because they had screenshots of it and all. And I went through post after post and read them, and it's stunning some of the things that I saw, like the a post that said the fun part about this is it won't result in any change or any introspection at the healthcare companies or government regulators. Rather, it will just boost the private security market, and these people making millions of dollars a year will hire more armed guards. Another post said, again, these are not my comments, but it just amazes me how many of these kinds of posts I saw. One said, remember how we celebrated the death of Hitler, Saddam Hussein, General Soleimani? None of these people rejected my aunt's cancer treatment, causing her to die a slow and painful death. Yet I can't celebrate the death of a man who indirectly caused that. F that man. Vile, vitriol comments. And I expect a couple of those. I'm almost speechless. I expect a couple of those, but when I saw as many as I saw, it made me ask, is there a bigger problem? And the more I processed and the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, let's ask you. Let's have a community conversation with our listeners. How significant is the issue of what insurance companies are doing across America with those of us who have health insurance? 800-288-9227 is the phone number. Donna from Greenwood, Louisiana. Thanks for listening over in Louisiana. I appreciate it. You're on with Westside Jeff. Donna, thanks for holding. What's your opinion on this?
Well, first of all, no one should rejoice in somebody getting shot and killed in broad daylight. That to me is that's another case. The other thing, the other people that were talking about the VA system, there are some big issues with that system, and I want you to go and do some research on the VA system, because I'm going to give you a couple of facts about that healthcare system. It is the most profitable healthcare system in the U.S. You probably find that hard to believe, but it's true. That is the only healthcare system that is not regulated by HIPAA. It is the only healthcare system that does not have a length of stay, a DRG. In every commercial, not for-profit facilities, you have a length of stay that you can stay in for certain diagnoses. And where insurance companies basically kind of kick you out is at like the 3/5 stay of that. That's where they're most profitable. And after that, they lose revenue. Before that, they can lose revenue also. So those are things that people do not understand. But I was about 20 years ago, we started a healthcare system in the state of Louisiana, and it still exists today, I will tell you that. And to start a healthcare system at that point in time, you had to put $1 million in 10 different bank systems. Louisiana didn't even have 10 different bank systems. We had to go to Texas to deposit at least in 3 different banks. So what I'm trying to tell you is that physicians didn't get paid. I was part of this because I was a physician advocate. And they would bring their bills and things to me and show me all these things that they would never get reimbursed for. I had to have big billing offices that did, there were only a few that did major billing for all the anesthesiologists, and they got paid by 15-minute increments, and they weren't getting paid. The reason they were getting paid is because the CRNAs from the healthcare system were getting their bills in prior to the physician. So the physicians got no reimbursement from the insurance company. Think about that. Now, but the employees of the hospital, they got reimbursed. The hospital, the healthcare system got reimbursed. The insurance company would not even pay a claim till after it was submitted 3 times. They were told to deny. After the third time, after the third time, they would pay it. Maybe. And that's if the patient or an advocate of the patient complained, and they would get reimbursed. So if the physicians aren't getting paid and the patients aren't getting their reimbursement, where is the money going?
Good question.
I'm just saying. Now, I touched and felt too much of that stuff. And
Donna, let me ask you a question. From your viewpoint, your experience, you indicated you worked for an insurance company one time. Sounds like you're very smart in that community. I've never worked in that. What one change would you recommend making that would make it better for the consumer all the way around? Name one thing.
The thing that I would go back to is to letting the physician, because here's the thing. Let the physician call the shots. And any insurance company, and I'll tell you, everybody that said something and what they're saying, that insurance deny coverage, that's not true. What an insurance company does is they will tell you, you can have whatever you want done. What we're telling you is we're not paying for it.
Yeah.
What we're telling you is, and if you want to get an MRI, first you have to get an X-ray. Then you have to get a CT, and then you can get an MRI. And then if you do all 3 of those things, and maybe your doctor said you needed a PET scan, maybe you can get a PET scan. They're not denying coverage. They're denying payment.
Yeah. Donna,
and
thank
then
you.
What you get is an 18-year-old on the phone who doesn't know what they're talking about, say you didn't fill in this blank, so I'm not going to pay your claim.
Yeah. Donna, thank you for calling. I appreciate your opinion on that and weighing in on this. I got to hit the bottom of the hour news. And on the other side of that, I want to get to several more phone calls. My questions to you tonight are, have you been screwed by an insurance company? Have you been on the wrong end of it? Has your family been on the wrong end of it? And what does that look like? I'd like to hear your story. And I especially want to hear from folks in the medical industry or insurance industry who have seen that, and what recommendations would you have? There's a lot of hatred out there right now towards insurance companies, and I got to ask, is it real, or is it just bots on the web? Want to hear your thoughts. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Got to hit bottom of the hour news with Lori Wolfenschmidt in the newsroom. She'll have an update on what's going on with this story and Central Park, the backpack, and some other things. And also some news maybe out of South Korea, how the president apologizes for martial law attempt as an impeachment vote goes on. So she'll have a lot of news going on tonight. You'll hear that in about 3 minutes. On the other side of that, we'll continue your phone calls. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Name is Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Crock tonight. You can catch me across social media at Westside Jeff. Watching all the social media and all the comments across social channels about the assassination of Brian Robinson, the CEO of United Healthcare. And I was stunned when I saw a story that said after United Healthcare had posted the loss of their CEO on social media on Facebook on Wednesday, not long after, by the end of the day, somewhere along the way, they had 46,000 reactions to the Facebook post, 41,000 of which employed a laughing emoji. People were celebrating the assassination of this guy because they were angry at insurance companies. Made me stop and regroup and say, what the hell? Why is that? And when you have that kind of vitriol across social with regard to an event, you have to draw another conclusion. And people are pissed off at insurance companies. It made me think about asking the question tonight of, have you been wronged by an insurance company? Are you one of those that is angry at insurance companies? Have you been screwed by it as your family has a loved one? I'd like to hear your story. And 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. And if you're in healthcare, if you're in the insurance industry, and even if you don't want to use your real name to protect your identity, so be it. Call and share your opinion, 800-288-9227. Bill from Dallas, thanks for holding through that news break. I appreciate you holding, and thanks for listening to Westside Jeff. What's your thought on this whole story?
Jeff, how are you doing tonight?
Thank you for calling, my friend. I'm great. Thank you for calling. What's your thought?
Well, so, look, hey, first and foremost, I feel bad for this guy. I don't know if he had a wife, if he had a family. Murder on any level, anybody who gets murdered, anybody who dies, the family's affected. Murder is never good, and the fact that there were 40,000 people who smiled at that or left a happy emoji, that's insane. I have no idea what this society has become. If the person who shot this guy thought he was going to make a change, clearly he was demented in some way and didn't understand what the process is. But, my take is that I think this is, I know there's this spin on the whole disgruntled family thing, but I think we're giving this way too much hype because he's a CEO. And, any murder is horrible. And we don't give this kind of attention to the guy who gets murdered at a 7-Eleven, or a cop that gets shot, or a fireman that, a paramedic that gets shot, just a regular citizen. And I don't know that a CEO makes this, such a viral news story. Furthermore, I think by giving it this much attention, I think you're not advocating it, but you're glorifying it. And I think you're at risk at, causing more people to react like this. Like, I just don't get the hype that just because this guy's a CEO, that it should get such intense nationwide coverage.
Bill, thank you for calling and thank you for listening. It's interesting that you share that thought, because that was one of the posts I saw several times across social channels that said more people are killed in our city over the course of one night or one day or 1 week than that, and it never gets any attention. Yet there's a lot of attention to this. I think part of the attention to this story is because of the position he held, not just a CEO, but CEO of a very large health insurance company. And the people are just angry at what insurance companies have done. So that makes a part of it. And that, to me, is the bigger story here. If this story is captivating the attention of our country, it's not just because of the loss of life or just because he's CEO. It's because of the vitriol towards insurance companies. To me, it's a bigger problem. And that's why I want to bring it up tonight. And I appreciate your call. Thank you very much. Tony from Houston, you've been on hold for a few months. Thanks for holding through a couple breaks. I appreciate you sitting tight there.
Thanks, Jeff.
Run with Westside Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff, for taking my call. I would like to make the argument that insurance is not the solution; it's the problem. And I'd like to make my point by asking you a question. Suppose the medical doctors and the hospitals sent a letter to the insurance companies and said, we're going to cut our costs by 1,000%. Do you think that the insurance companies would be happy about that?
I got to think about that and process that. That's an interesting question. Finish the rest of your statement.
I would argue that they would not be happy. And the reason they would not be is because we would not need insurance. Basically, what we're doing when we pay insurance premiums, we are giving companies money to bid against us for the services that we may need in the future.
Conceptually, you're right.
And so if you look at it from the point of view that insurance, if you look back in the 1960s and 50s when I grew up, my dad was a construction worker and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and there was 3 boys, and he managed to put us through three surgeries on his salary. Now, you cannot do that today.
I'd agree with that.
So my dad went to the hospital and sat down across the table with hospital personnel and the doctors, and they came up with a deal. And my dad he held up his end of the bargain. But the choice was either you can do it for this much, or you don't make anything. And they chose to make less. And so I think if we went back to something similar to that, that's the closest thing to a solution I think we're going to find. Now, there was back in the day insurance but it was catastrophe. It was if you're in a car wreck. It was something unforeseen, not day-to-day, health needs.
Tony, thank you for calling. I appreciate your opinion on that interesting perspective. Brian from Burnett, you're on with Westside Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 WBAP.
Hi, Jeff. I did actually work for an insurance company many years ago, back in 2001. And I wanted to take a break from what I was doing. And so I went to work for an insurance company, and it was probably one of the worst things I had ever done. I hated it. Everything about it was terrible. But I've been in the automotive repair industry pretty much my entire life. And the biggest issue that I have is that providers, like if you go to an eye doctor, a dentist, anything, that is it going to be insurance or is it going to be customer pay? And why are there 2 rates? There shouldn't be.
Great question. Those are negotiated rates.
Yeah, the industries that are doing the service, and I'm still in the automotive repair industry, we shouldn't have 2 separate rates. It shouldn't be that way. And I currently have an issue where I have peripheral artery disease, and I did not have health insurance and was diagnosed with this. And it's fairly debilitating.
Brian, you make some really good, valid points. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you calling, and thank you for being a part of the show. You bring up a good question, and I would ask our listeners to weigh in on that. Responding to Brian for Burnett, what are your thoughts on what Brian said? What are your thoughts on what Tony from Houston said? Get rid of insurance companies. Here's one thing I know. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. I remember being, as a kid, I don't remember the cost of insurance and the cost of medical care being what it is today. At some point in time in my lifetime, it has gotten out of control. It just has. And Brian had a good question. Why is it there are multiple rates? If you're insured with XYZ company, the cost of this service, this surgery, this procedure is X. If you're insured by another company, it's Y. And if you don't have insurance, it's Z. great question. I don't know why that is. And I'm not smart enough to understand that. I'm not in the industry, and love to hear your perspective. But it comes back to my original question, and that is, have you been screwed by an insurance company? It seems like there's a lot of folks posting about the UHC murder of the CEO that are angry at healthcare providers, the insurance companies, not providers, but the insurance companies, and they're just pissed off. And it comes back to denial of service, prior authorization, those kinds of things. Are those real or are they not? Have you had experience? I'd love to hear your story. 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. Got to hit a quick break. It's about 3.5 minutes long. On the other side of that, we'll get to Deb, Mike, and JJ. Guys, sit tight. We'll take your calls right after this. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. On Wednesday morning, moments after the news broke that Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare, had been fatally shot in Midtown Manhattan, social media unleashed a barrage of caustic commentary about his death in lieu of condolences. Certainly there were condolences, but it didn't take long before the tide turned, and the tide started turning towards almost rejoicing in the man's death. On Facebook, United Healthcare's statement about the murder of its chief executive officer being killed elicited 46,000 reactions, 41,000 of which employed the laughing emoji. And as I spent most of the afternoon scrolling through many social sites, I just saw comments that just really stunned me. One of them was, not joking here, but it's very likely the CEO of United Healthcare was responsible for more deaths than bin Laden. Just did it for a different God. More money, more power, and through legal channels. And it just surprised me to see comments like that. Another one said, I wouldn't pull a trigger, but I'm not going to feel any sympathy either. If the list of suspects includes the majority of your customers, maybe you are the problem. That was the tonality of many of the posts that I've seen across social media. It made me realize there's a real anger towards health insurance companies, insurers, and the industry. As I read more and more comments, the number of people that said, yes, a loved one died because of the red tape they deal with through insurance companies. And it made me wonder, is that real? Are those bots, or is that real? Have you had experiences like that? I'd like to hear your story. 800-288-9227. Deb from Haslett, you're on with Westside Jeff. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate your time. Listening to all your callers so far, I can pretty much agree with what they're all saying. There's so many different layers to the problem I think that we're having, though. And my situation, I think, even adds another one most people don't think about. And I actually had a stroke about 8 years ago, and fairly young for that sort of thing to happen. I was right around 50. I first went in to be checked, and you're right. You said earlier, or the lady who called earlier, they did a CT scan on me in the ER and didn't see anything and sent me home. I continued to get worse, and so 4 days later, I went back, and they did an MRI at that time and found that I'd had a stroke. And at that point, it was too late for them to really give me the medication that they would give you within that quick turnaround time period they have. But anyway, fast forward to my situation. Through my employer, I was able to get insurance, get my insurance to cover this, and I actually had to go out on short-term disability, which was provided by the same insurance company as my medical coverage was being taken care of. And they were making direct deposits. I was coming up on the situation where I was going to have to go into some long-term situation with the long-term insurance coverage, because I was still doing rehab and all that sort of thing. And lo and behold, my direct deposits had stopped. No phone calls, no anything. And when I called the insurance company, the guy on the phone told me that's because I needed to go back to work. I had used up my time. And I'm like, wait, I'm filing long-term insurance. And he's like, if you can sit in a chair, you can sit at a desk and do your job. And I'm like, I'm still going to rehab. I still see doctors 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, it's a stroke. You have all kinds of, everybody has different issues with that. Long story short, I had to get a attorney who filed a letter asking for my files. He never got them. What happened was I got my direct deposit all of a sudden out of nowhere. However, through this whole fight, I was a single person and I had no income coming in. My employer wouldn't let me come back to work because I didn't have a doctor's release. So I had to go beg my doctors, my neurologists, heart doctors and everything, saying, I don't have a choice. I have to do something. My boss got angry with the insurance company. Anyway, my company was really good to me. They worked it out to where they put me as a remote person, and I gradually, added hours till I was a full-time 40 hours, but they were totally against what this insurance company had done. And I will say that my employer, after that, they switched companies and we've never gone back to that provider again. And it's been 8 years. But
Deb, it sounds like you were caught in the middle between insurance and work and law and legal and a lot of elements. And those are the kind of stories I'm not aware of and never experienced it. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you calling. I got to hit top of the hour news break. So thank you for calling and being a part of the show. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and we're talking about the stories impacting you and your life on the health insurance side. And that really is part of the story of the shooting, the mass murder, the murder of the CEO of United Healthcare. If you're one of those been impacted, I'd love to hear your story, like Deb from Hazlitt, 800-288-9227. Got to hit the top of the hour news with Lori Waffen-Schmidt in the newsroom with an update on this story and others. On the other side, that will continue with your calls. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.